Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dawn Haghighi.
Imagine, you're in China, the China of 30 years ago. Deng Xiaoping was the supreme leader. Stand with me on stage in front of 2,000 professional colleagues. You're ready to offer your remarks in Mandarin, and you have been practicing forever. 3, 2, 1. On went the red light, and I literally froze. Absolute silence. 4,000 eyes staring directly at me. I still have nightmares.
Say hello to your better self, going from the ordinary to the extraordinary.
I will return to the nightmare in China, I promise. But first to Iran in 1956. My dad left Tehran for America with a suitcase, a medical degree, and a dream of making a difference helping people. Dad continues his cardiology training at Ohio Valley Hospital, where my mom, Dolly, was a registered nurse. And lucky for me, they met at the outpatient clinic where their love for each other and the world began. Everyone who meets my mom and dad sees that together they are a force of kindness and a catalyst for positive change. Two ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I was a child in Cleveland in the 1960s. And this is the year when my dad begins to do extraordinary things as a cardiology fellow under Dr. Henry Zimmerman at St. Vincent's Charity, while also learning from Dr. Mason Sones at the Cleveland Clinic. Along with these two renowned doctors who had recently pioneered the groundbreaking procedure, cardiac catheterization, Dad was at the vanguard. For the first time, doctors could now visualize the coronary arteries of the human heart. My father is one of the first physicians to perform this procedure, which marks the birth of modern cardiac care. Dr. Zimmerman publishes the seminal medical school textbook, Intravascular Catheterization. My father, Dr. Dariush Haghighi, co-authored Chapter 2, Left Heart Catheterization. As a child, I remember him by his typewriter with my mom by his side. They were using carbon paper as he typed the chapter in English, his second language. This documented medical history forever changed the lives of countless people around the world. Dad didn't take the path of fame. Instead, he dedicated his life to service and his practice to compassionate care, impacting the community one patient at a time. He would spend hours at the charity clinic, and in his own practice, he never turned anyone away. Insurance was not an issue. Dr. Danny and Dr. Doug, my two brothers, follow in our dad's footsteps. Dad would say, I have a skill to help people, especially those suffering and underserved. That's what it means to be a physician. Dawn, in whatever profession you choose, promise me you will always use that profession for the betterment of humanity. But Dad sees himself as just another ordinary man, and that it's his vision of the world and his beliefs that give him the power to do extraordinary things. His words and actions became the model for me, an ordinary person, to meet extraordinary challenges in my life. From academic research, we know that it's ordinary individuals, not institutions, title, or rank, that are the source of change in society. And history also shows us true and lasting changes are sparked by individuals with vision. Every individual has the power to ignite transformative change. And my parents taught us kids, along with that power comes our duty to stand up for the disadvantaged. As my parents say, imagine the world the way it could be, not the way it is. They see the world through a prism of virtue, and in their words, a world without barriers. That's how they live their lives, and they teach us the same. Let me tell you about Carol. It is the late 1960s, a time of social evolution. The horror of Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the women's revolution, and the first moonwalk. This time brought new opportunities for some, but not for others. My dad's scrub nurse, Marilyn, confided in him about her concerns for her daughter, Carol. Carol's an intelligent, talented young woman about to graduate from high school. But who would be facing a non-accessible world, offering no options for school or career because of her physical disabilities? Now remember, this is more than 20 years before the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Social segregation was the norm. Dad always brought reality home to the family dinner table. To Mom, his force of strength, but also to us children. No problems were off limits. I clearly remember that night when he went around the table and he asked each of us, myself, Danny, and Dougie, what can we do to help Carol? The focus was not on what society could do or what should be done, but rather what we as ordinary people could do to make a difference now. That family consultation was my dad's call to action, and he paved the way for Carol's acceptance into an EKG tech program. Carol worked hard. She learned how to take electrocardiograms, how to interact with patients, and studied the requirements for healthcare workers. And no surprise, Carol graduated with flying colors. Dad hired Carol as the new EKG tech, welcoming her into his office family. He also brought me into the office. I love following my dad around. We worked with a contractor to make the office space accessible. And remember, this is long before it was required by the ADA. His genius was knowing that giving a chance was not enough, that we also have to make a chance work. He even created a customized EKG rolling table, and I've kept that table all these years. Here it is reconfigured. Ultimately, Carol was one of the most loyal and hardworking employees. But her story got off to a rocky start, and it taught me what academic research shows us. One cannot bring about change simply through organizational change. It requires individual change. Some of my dad's office staff questioned his actions. Why? Because they weren't the norm of the day. Dad's answer was simple but twofold. One's capabilities are not defined by their disabilities. And secondly, he explained to everyone what he taught our family. Diversity and inclusion brings us unity. Ever the scientist, Dad reminds us of Einstein's physics. When a force is diverse, it's stronger. But then Dad was faced with an unexpected challenge. Not everyone was comfortable with this new and unknown situation. And some patients and staff even expressed concerns about continuing the relationship. It still saddens me that as a society, we create barriers through misconceptions. But for Dad, there was no question. He would stand by Carol even if every patient and staff member quit. This stance taught me as a child what moral courage means. You must do what is right, never sacrifice your dignity and honor. And Dad said that all the time. As I reflect on how Dad successfully faced this challenge, the special words of Governor Nelson Rockefeller linger in my mind. Leadership is nothing more than introducing people to their better selves. Dad understood that artificial barriers erected between people result from a lack of education and interaction. So once again, Dr. Haghighi demonstrates the extraordinary. He does not dismiss people with differing views. Instead, he responds by engaging everyone. He had the inspired idea for what I now call a peace summit. Let's just bring everybody together to share their thoughts openly and frankly. My whole family participated. And you know what? This becomes my first public speaking event. Of course, I was nervous. I was 7 years old. Mom lovingly coached me, and her simple words to a 7-year-old manifest themselves today like this. It doesn't matter how your message sounds, how nervous you are, don't think about yourself. It's all about the power of your message. These words have guided every speaking engagement in my life, including this talk right now. I clearly remember the spirit of my words, if not the words exactly. Dan and I shared what we saw in Carol, and it was that twinkle in her smile, and that she was our friend. Mom, as a medical professional, was able to explain that Carol had the training and competence required. And Mom emphasized that a person's potential must be measured by their skills, not by their special needs. The Peace Summit worked through education and consultation. The meaningful interaction introduced people to their better selves. Fears were alleviated, and in the end, a divided community was brought together. Exactly what my parents worked for and believed in, their vision in action. Carol's success story is one of my most powerful childhood memories, and that's why it has resonated with me all of these years. It illustrates to me the elements through which an ordinary person like myself can do extraordinary things. The lessons learned as a child have motivated me to present at numerous global thought leadership programs around the world, taking me to the Asia-Pacific region some 30 times, beginning in 1987. That's when I lived in a work unit in Beijing, studying Mandarin at a Wellesley program. Now, as promised, let's go back to my nightmare in China, June 1990. I'm about to present on healthcare at the first Sino-American Women's Conference held in the same venue where Chairman Mao presented years before. At this time, the US and China were both on the precipice of advancing the rights of the disabled. President George H.W. Bush is a few weeks away from signing into law the landmark Americans with Disabilities Act. China was also at a major turning point by reframing the pejorative terminology used to refer to people with disabilities. Up until this point, the term used was sanfei, meaning incomplete, useless, deficient. The word was being reframed to tanji, meaning disease or sickness. Although not a perfect term, it signaled a positive change. The events of those times made me determined to present my message in the most powerful and impactful way. I decided to present my intro remarks at that conference in Mandarin. In the words of Nelson Mandela, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. Now, unfortunately, such magic is easier repeated than performed. And here's my dilemma. Mandarin is a tonal language. The tones determine the meaning of the word. For example, ma means horse, but ma means mother. And as you can hear, I struggle with the tones. I can't even sing happy birthday. And even my first Mandarin professor at Middlebury recognized this right away, telling me, Dawn, the study of Mandarin is not for you. Well, his comments and my linguistic shortcomings did not deter me. They propelled me. So for weeks before the conference, I rehearsed ad infinitum on the plane, in the hotel, walking around Beijing, anywhere and everywhere. And now, at the podium, the time was upon me. Here we go, Dawn. Action. And I froze. 2,000 people, 4,000 eyes looking right at me. I can't speak. I fought with myself. I said, Dawn, just drop it. Just do it in English. No one will know. And as I stood there in silence for what seemed like an eternity, suddenly what comes to me? 2 people, Carol and then my mother. Carol with her courage to rise above limitations others placed on her, and then my mom with the same advice she gave me decades before. The power of your words can change lives. Speak from your heart, act on the courage of your convictions. The words started to flow in Mandarin. 各位先生,各位女士. My preparation prevailed. My opening statement was complete. I paused before switching to English. The room erupted into a standing ovation. I was silent once again, humbled by this proud achievement. From my speech for Carol to this moment in Beijing, my journey was connected. There I was, an ordinary person doing an extraordinary thing. I invite each of you to identify the inspirations in your life, people or actions that motivate you to think about challenging the status quo, visionary people who have dreamed beyond the impossible. As a lawyer, a woman, and a daughter of an immigrant, I am forever inspired by Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, the first African American on the court. As a young boy, he reimagined the world not as it was, but what it could be. And he asked, why not? As a lawyer, he successfully challenged the separate but equal doctrine, the very doctrine that years before denied him admission to law school based on his race. And as one of the most brilliant legal minds in our nation's history, he challenged the injustice embedded in our laws. Thurgood Marshall's vision of justice led our nation and the world to a new way of life, showing us that the future of humankind is far, far greater than the narrow perspective of the past. It embraces all people. To celebrate Justice Marshall and to illustrate how important one voice can be in bringing about extraordinary change, my first order of business as the president of the Association of Corporate Counsel Chicago chapter was to establish the Thurgood Marshall Career Achievement Award. On the occasion of the inaugural award, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg sent a congratulatory note sharing her thoughts on the Justice Marshall Award and its recipients, Federal Court of Appeals judges Dorothy W. Nelson and Alana Rovner. She wrote, "Advancing the ideal of equal justice under the law is the model of all a good judge should be." I recall Justice Sandra Day O'Connor saying to me, "Justice Marshall was a man who saw the world exactly as it is, and he pushed on to make it what it could become." These individuals, my mom and dad, Carol, and Justice Marshall, they all took the ordinary and made it extraordinary. They imagined and ignited change by possessing the wisdom to know what was right, and most importantly, the courage and strength to implement what was right. We cannot rest on their heroism. And when it comes to change, Gloria Steinem offers this simple thought: without an idea, without the imagination of change, you cannot spark change. It is the imagination that comes first. Our history is written in stone, but we can change the path to our future. So today, as you sit here thinking about yourself in these challenging times, take a moment. Imagine doing something extraordinary, something that just might change the ordinary.